Еще раз добрый день всем. Мне посчастливилось, и мне помогут с английским языком Марго, которая поможет переводить на английский. О чем будет доклад? Это короткое сообщение, поэтому я постараюсь довольно-таки быстро говорить.
Только паузу делай.
Конечно. Вот. Мы решили изучить влияние общих когнитивных способностей на способность усваивать математику. То есть каким образом общие когнитивные способности как бы предоставляют фундамент для развития математических способностей, математического мышления.
So the goal of this Okay, so good afternoon. I have a pleasure to help translating, but I'll try my best. I'm not a professional translator. So the goal of this presentation is to figure out the role of cognitive abilities and the influence of cognitive abilities on the mathematical ability.
Мы в течение уже 5 лет, даже больше, проводим исследования на тему, какие когнитивные, общие когнитивные способности помогают развивать математические способности. Дело в том, что все наши технологии, обучающие, педагогические технологии, они должны быть основаны на каком-то психологическом фундаменте. То есть мы должны знать некие общие психологические механизмы для того, чтобы правильно и грамотно разрабатывать педагогические технологии.
So in order to develop some pedagogical technology, they need to find out some fundamental principles and mainly cognitive, the relation between cognitive and mathematical ability.
И поскольку у нас очень большой университет, университет ИТМО в Санкт-Петербурге, у нас более 272 специальностей, инженеров с различным уровнем математической подготовки. Начиная от тех студентов, которые изучают математику от 10 даже меньше часов, включая и аудиторные, и самостоятельную работу. И заканчивая продвинутыми инженерами, те, которые изучают математику в очень большом объеме и плюс к этому очень высокого уровня сложности.
It's a big university in St. Petersburg, and she works at the Faculty of Engineering, and there are also different groups of engineers who study mathematics just a little bit and have a lot of study, a lot of hours of mathematics.
И я сегодня вам хочу представить именно один из фрагментов этого большого исследования — когнитивный стиль, полезависимость, поленезависимость. Он изучается в психологии, в когнитивной психологии в настоящее время и характеризует свойства человека при столкновении с новой ситуацией, рассматривать это информационное поле и выделять в нем существенные детали. То есть выделить в новом информационном фрагменте, бэкграунд, да, можно сказать, основе какие-то существенные детали, которые помогают выделить структуру. Вот.
They look at the characteristic called felt independence or dependence, and that's basically the ability to single out some structure from a bigger structure.
Вот, например, рисунок. Это плоский рисунок, да, ну вот сам по себе-то он же плоский, но человек должен увидеть в этом рисунке 3D-картинку, да, то есть представить себе стереометрический вид.
So on the right there is a flat figure. It looks like a flat figure, but a student or a learner should recognize a three-dimensional sort of pyramid or yeah, I don't know. So that's the test, right?
Эта способность выделять существенные детали в общем поле, да, она, на наш взгляд, характеризует одну из основных способностей в математическом мышлении. Если среди вас присутствует, а я больше чем уверена, что это так, преподаватели математики, хоть в школе, хоть в вузе, вы наверняка слышали так же, как и я, очень часто, как вы это делаете, вернее, как вы это видите, что надо выделить то-то, надо сделать такие-то преобразования, надо так-то повернуть какую-то фигуру или еще что-то.
So if we have teachers at the school level or the university level in the audience, it's probably you are familiar with the situation when a student or somebody asks, how do you know what to do, and how do you see the structure, how do you know where to follow?
Вот, и взяв вот это вот положение о том, что полезависимость и поленезависимость представляют собой некий фундамент для развития математического мышления, но одна из составляющих, мы решили провести такое вот исследование.
So the hypothesis is that field dependence and field independence characteristic is one of the fundamental behind that ability to know what to do.
И мы взяли 93 своих студента из различных вот как раз групп с различной наполняемостью математическими дисциплинами. Метод, который мы выбрали для того, чтобы выявить вот наличие у них этой способности, мы взяли фигуры Готшильда.
So on the right you see Gottschalk figures, and they were used to test 93 first and second year students from different engineering programs.
Вверху справа на рисунке вы можете увидеть сложную фигуру. И таких фигур представлялись студентам 30 таких фигур. И внизу вот деталь от общей фигуры. Деталей было представлено 5 таких примитивов, да, и надо было выбрать в каждом из сложных рисунков по одному примитиву. То есть какой именно примитив присутствует в данной сложной фигуре.
So the task was to recognize the primitive figure below in the more complicated figure which is shown above it. And there were 30 of such tasks given to the students, different tasks.
И в результате получилась следующая картинка. Ну да, конечно, корреляция здесь получилась довольно-таки высокой. И на самом деле, чем больше ответов вот по тесту Готшильда, тем преподаватель высшей математики, в то время курс такой общий, который длится 1,5 года, на некоторых специальностях 2 года. Вот, он давал характеристику каждому студенту, оценивал его как способность в математике, то есть его успешность в математике от 0 до 20 баллов.
So the correlation was made between the results of the Gottschalk test and the marks of the students in the course, right? And Можете напомнить, Group 1 and Group 2 это что?
А это я еще не говорила.
Okay, so it was high in both cases, but we'll hear soon about what are the Group 1 and Group 2. But there was a high correlation between the child test and the mark in the course.
Но интереснее всего получилось следующее. То есть вот эта выборка, она разбилась на две группы. Группа 1 и группа 2. В группе первой средний уровень вот по тесту Готшильда был 28, ну, там 12 сотых. А во второй группе 21. То есть...
Out of 30, right?
А?
Из 30. 28 из 30?
Да. Ну, да, 28 из 30.
Okay.
То есть и получается, что еще более интересный момент. В группе первой оказались все студенты, сразу прям просто все студенты, которые учатся с большим объемом математики и с высоким уровнем сложности. Во второй группе оказались студенты, у которых математики меньше. И кроме того, к первой группе были присоединены несколько человек, ну, попали в эту группу, из тех студентов, которые учатся с меньшим объемом математики, но у них вот хорошая вот эта способность. Так самое интересное, преподаватель математики оценил этих студентов как ленивых, безответственных. Почему? Потому что математика давалась им очень легко. То есть очень легко, и они поэтому попали во вторую группу.
Yeah, you have a question?
No, I just want to ask kindly if she could make more pauses because you can't translate a page.
No, yeah. Поменьше предложения.
Yes. Хорошо.
Sorry about that. So there were two groups, and in the first group, there were people who had 28.12 out of 30 according to the test, and they were also 56% is what is of total, right? 56 это что это?
Это от общей выборки.
Okay. So 56 people had this score, and the group number 1 included students who had a lot of mathematics to study, the stronger students, and also students whom some teachers characterized as lazy because they took courses with not so much of math, but they were capable of doing more. So something like that.
И вот предварительные результаты, которые мы можем сейчас представить, ну, как бы как интерпретацию и предложение для дискуссии.
These are preliminary results.
Это то, что действительно вот эта способность выделять существенные детали в структуре, то есть поленезависимость, она является как неким необходимым условием для развития математических способностей.
This is a necessary condition. The ability, the field independence, the ability to pick up the elements from a more complicated structure, they think it's a necessary condition for good mathematical performance and learning.
Второй момент, на который хотелось бы обратить внимание, что, скорее всего, существует какой-то порог, то есть пороговое значение вот этой поленезависимости, после которого студент может... Ведь здесь...
They think there is a threshold, that there is a minimum number after which the student can sort of accelerate on its own, right?
Ведь, смотрите, вот в первую группу, когда мы говорили, в первую группу, там попали все очень успешные студенты математики.
First group consisted of very successful students of mathematics.
И кажется, что эти студенты, ну, то есть математика помогает развивать вот эту поленезависимость. Но
It looks like mathematics helps them to develop, so it's an inverse influence on the ability to pick up an element from a more complex structure.
Но, скорее всего, все как раз наоборот. То есть
But they think most likely it's the other way around.
скорее всего, присутствие вот этой общей способности поленезависимости, она обеспечивает вот развитие математических способностей и то, что студенты способны справляться с таким объемом информации математической.
So field independence most likely is the reason of their good ability and the fact that they can process a lot of information and do well.
Yes. И ну, в заключение только что, скорее всего, все-таки эта способность развивается в детстве. И вот в следующий момент хотелось бы проследить, в какой момент времени ее нужно поддержать для того, чтобы математические способности развивались.
So the emerging question is that they think that this ability of field independence develops in the childhood, and the question is how and when it needs to be supported.
Yes. Спасибо. Thank you.
My name is Samantha Bergen. I'm a graduate student in my first year at the College of Staten Island, and I have been working on this study, the quality of differentiated instruction, with technology and mathematics by pre-service elementary school teachers with my professor, Dr. Irina Lubinskaya, for the past 2 years. So differentiated instruction is something that is talked about often in materials in preparation for teaching and textbooks, but is not something that is found often defined in research, and there is no commonly accepted definition for differentiated instruction found in research. When differentiation is implemented, it accommodates each student's individual way of thinking and learning and makes sure that the needs of all students are met. And a direct link has been found between when differentiation is being implemented fully and an increase in both student performance in class and engagement. Differentiated instruction is not just a benefit to the students, but is also a benefit to the teachers in the classroom, because when teachers are differentiating, it allows them to consider the strengths and the weaknesses of the students in their class and make sure that they are accommodating all of their students' needs. And it also provides the opportunity for teachers to reflect on their practices in teaching and how well they are carrying out instruction and their skills that need improvement on and how well they are doing. So it was found that there are 3 specific areas in which differentiation occurs. Content, which focuses on curriculum materials and performance and often focuses on planning. Process, which focuses on activities that promote student understanding that occur throughout the lesson. And product, which focuses on the end results that display student understanding, often found through assessment. So in our research, we found that there were very few instruments that focus on assessing the quality of differentiated instruction. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the instruments that we did find. First, I'm going to talk about 2 self-assessment rubrics that we found, or self-assessment instruments that we found. The first one was a survey by Cooper and others, and this self-assessment instrument assessed differentiation of content only. It did not focus on process and product. It also only assessed differentiated instruction practices that were carried out for students with disabilities. It didn't take into account differentiation for other students in the classroom. The next one was a differentiated instruction scale, or the DIS, by Roy and others. This was also a self-assessment instrument which assessed differentiation of content, process, and product. So it did hit all three categories, and it split this criteria into two categories, instructional adaptations and academic progress monitoring. And this instrument did assess differentiation for all students. However, since it is a self-assessment instrument, there is always room for bias when self-reporting. We only found one instrument that was used for external assessment. It was the Differentiated Classroom Observation Scale by Cassidy and others. And this instrument assessed differentiation, again, in all three categories: content, process, and product. However, this focused only on differentiation used for gifted students. It didn't take into account other students in the classroom. And the instrument had a very extensive list of criteria that took a lot of training for raters to become familiar with. And because of this, it didn't provide prompt feedback and took a while for results to come back. We also found one instrument that had both self and external assessment instruments. It was the COSAR. And this instrument assessed differentiation on product and process. It didn't take into account content. And it also assessed for all students. So based on the instruments that we did find, we found that we needed an instrument that can use various forms of data, such as lesson plans, observations, videos of lessons, that can all be used to assess in all three areas: content, process, and product. We also wanted our instrument to be able to focus on instruction for all students, not a specific group like some of the others did, such as gifted students only or students with disabilities only. We also wanted our instrument to be used for both self-assessment and external assessment. We wanted it to be simple so that teachers could use it quickly and provide prompt feedback and not have to take a while to understand it or to provide results. So the purpose of the study was to develop and validate an instrument for assessing quality of differentiated instruction, which led to a research question of how well are elementary school pre-service special education teachers prepared to differentiate instruction in mathematics. So this study took place in New York City Public University, and the course that we pulled from was a required graduate pedagogy course for pre-service special education teachers, and this course specifically focused on integrating technology into teaching mathematics and science to students with disabilities in age groups 5 through 12. And the teachers that we used were all pre-service teachers for special education, but they all held their initial certification and were currently teaching. This research project was a pre-post single group design, and it has been ongoing for 2 years. The instrument that we developed was the Differentiated Instruction Rubric, or the DIR. The participants in our study, we had 170 participants. The vast majority of them were females. 40% had no license, and the majority of those that did have license held their license in childhood education. To develop our instrument, we adapted from the differentiated instruction scale that was mentioned earlier. And we took their 12 categories that they had, and we adapted some of the material and took the items and divided them into those two categories, the instructional adaptations and the academic progress monitoring that they had, and we modified what was there. We also identified levels for differentiation ranging from 1 to 4, in which these differentiation practices could fit into. And we developed rubrics for each item that listed specific categories or specific criteria for each item, and which would fall into a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, and broke it down that way. So these levels ranged from a level 1, in which no instruction, differentiated instruction occurred, and from a level 1, it would move on to a level 2, in which differentiated instruction did occur, but wasn't necessarily aligned with the student's individual needs. And from a level 2 to a level 3, in which differentiation is implemented, but for students with special learning needs disabilities only. And from a level 3 to a level 4, which would be differentiation is implemented for all students in the classroom, regardless of disabilities or level of performance. So these are just two examples of one from an instructional adaptations category and one from an academic progress monitoring category, and to see how the criteria falls across level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So I'll leave that there for a minute. So we performed reliability and validity testing on this instrument. First, we performed content validity, in which our rubric was sent to 4 experts, and it was validated based on 2 criteria, importance and relevance of each item, and then also the accuracy of the language used to describe each item. And based on the feedback that we were given, we adjusted some of the language and the format, moved some things around so that they were better fit. And for reliability testing, we performed inter-rater reliability with 2 experts, in which we scored 25 lesson plans. And the inter-rater reliability showed strong positive correlations, which indicated a high level of inter-rater reliability. And we also performed internal consistency testing, in which 25 lessons were again used, and Cronbach's alpha showed high internal consistency based on what was reported. So based on the data that we found after analyzing these lessons plans, we performed a paired sample t-test, which produced these results, in which we compared the instructional adaptations and academic progress monitoring scores. We found that the scores for the first category were significantly higher than the scores for academic progress monitoring. However, since the Cohen's d coefficient was so small, the difference was not practical. And taking a look at some of the data that we found, we pulled some of the most commonly used technology for differentiated instruction in both instructional adaptations and academic progress monitoring. So commonly used for instructional adaptations were digital manipulatives that were used from online resources that students can use throughout the lesson. Problem-solving software such as Excel used to aid the students. Websites with interactive leveled tasks, in which a task is presented at several levels, and students can select the level that they perform best on, and sometimes the level will adjust based on how the students are performing to better suit their needs. And technology was also used to reinforce directions for students. For academic progress monitoring, a variety of free apps and websites were used to track progress in the classroom and provide immediate feedback to teachers and store data for them, such as Plickers, Kahoot, and Quizlet. So now I just want to give some examples of differentiation used at levels 2, 3, and 4, since there's no differentiation in level 1 that we found in some of the lessons. So this is an example from a 2nd grade lesson, which was on organizing data into a bar graph and using it to solve compare problems. So students were given packs of candy, and they had to sort the candy into a table based on how many of each color was given. So for some students, after the data was inserted into the table, they had to form the bar graph on their own by following steps. However, for other students, the data was automatically turned into a bar graph once it was put into a table, but there was no apparent regard for which students had to follow the steps to create the bar graph and which students the bar graph was created automatically for. This didn't take into account their needs. They were just randomly selected which had to follow the steps and which didn't. So because of this, this would be an example of a level 2. It doesn't take into account the specific learning needs of the students. An example of a level 3 differentiation. This is from a 5th grade lesson on dividing with 3-digit dividends. So students were given this digital manipulative of base 10 blocks, in which they could group the blocks, ungroup the blocks. It would tell them how many were in each group. They could rotate them if they needed to. And this resource was provided only for some students, only for students with disabilities, not for the whole class. So based on the fact that this resource was provided for the students with disabilities only, this is an example of a level 3. And for an example of a level 4, there was a 5th grade lesson on metric conversion, in which for a summative assessment quiz, a multiple choice question was presented, and students had to hold up their Plickers cards with the answer that they chose up. and the teacher was able to scan the room and collect the data on their responses. And the teacher was then able to immediately use that data to assign students their next task, whether they were ready to work individually on the next assignment, or if they needed to then go and work in a small group or reiterate some of the material that was being taught. So based on the information that we found in the data that we collected, we saw that most pre-service teachers are performing at around a level 2 or a level 3, meaning that they're either providing differentiation, which is not relevant for the specific needs of the students in their class, or they were providing differentiation, but only for students with disabilities. We also saw, looking at our full report of data, that although we had many students that performed at a level 4 in certain categories, we didn't have any that hit a level 4 all across the board in all 12 of the categories listed. So there was no one performing at a full level 4. So this is an opportunity for institutions which focus on preparing teachers to spend more time on teaching differentiation strategies that are appropriate for all students and spending more time on the difference between differentiating for all students in the classroom versus for a specific group of students. And we also saw that there was no apparent difference between the level of frequency of differentiation for the instructional adaptation categories versus for the academic progress monitoring categories.
We're switching gears a bit. So Samantha presented the major part of the work that is still going on, and she's working on that. So I just want to give a few comments on what is going on. We're all Russians, so Russians rushing, going fast, right? But anyway, so currently we are continuing to work with the data. We've collected significant amount of data and continuing to work with elementary school teachers in their mathematics lessons and actually following some of those students into their classrooms after they graduated. And the major part of it currently is dealing with validating the instrument that we've used. So in order to validate this instrument, we conducted preliminary factor analysis as one of the possibilities. And we have done exploratory and confirmatory. It's still work going. So we would like also, as soon as this particular instrument validated, to analyze changes in differentiation skills at different points of the teacher preparation program, from the course to the student teaching practicum, and then to the induction year where they start teaching full-time in the schools. Okay. So just a few details on the factor analysis. We've done some testing. At this point, the sample sizes, what we're using is 269 lessons with the videos of lessons. So we've done assumptions testings, and for most of the assumptions requirements, the data set is meeting the requirements for the factor analysis, except, so if you notice here, except one item that we are struggling with right now, trying to maybe revise and reconsider it, was one of the items on the academic progress monitoring dealing with assessment. And so we run Bartlett's test. So it shows that our sample is adequate and it is large enough. The testing also shows that the factor analysis is possible. We don't have identity matrix or irregular matrix. And I'm not going to go for all the details, but if you're interested, the presentation will be available. But so far, except for one item, like out of the 12 items, all of them behave the way we need for exploratory and factor analysis. So we run principal component analysis on the 12 variables. With this large sample, we could suppress loadings under 0.3. So what it shows is that, again, that on the 12 variables in our studies, the factor analysis, all these 12 items 11 items loaded in 2 factors. So our initial assumption, which was based on literature, that there are 2 different categories of differentiation, one dealing with instructional adaptations, changes in instruction, another one dealing with academic progress monitoring, when teacher uses constant assessment of students in order to adjust their instruction and assessment. It does load in those 2 categories. So that part of our instrument is appropriate, as we discussed. Then we also run confirmatory factor analysis, which confirm the 2 factors. Now, I'm going to show the table for that and explain. So if you look at this, these are 2 factors, and this is our 12 items with loading suppressed under 0.3. So there is some cross-loading, but as we know from theory, that if your loadings are significantly larger in one factor than the other, then you can assign them to one factor. The only problem, as I mentioned earlier, is for one of our items, which is here called APM4, Academic Progress Monitoring item, where both loadings were pretty low and they were equally distributed between 2 factors. So currently our work is to figure out what's going on and to make necessary revisions, adjustments to the rubric, and most likely go back and rescore 300 videos and lessons to get this to work for this particular population. So, and then our goal is to really, when the rubric is fully developed, to follow our students into the classroom and look at the maybe time series, the trajectory of learning, how technology could be used in differentiation, which includes how our students choose technology, whether the choice of technology is appropriate for the topics they teach in mathematics, whether it is appropriate for the levels of students they are working with and their needs in mathematics, and how it is incorporated into instruction and assessment. So the study was funded by our university, and I just want to add in my last 15 seconds that Samantha is a first-year master's student, not PhD student, and it's her first year in a graduate school. She just finished bachelor degree in May, and she's a full-time mathematics teacher in a middle school. So she needs to be congratulated. That's her first conference ever.
We have time for questions, 20 minutes or so. So any questions to any of the speakers? And maybe I'll let you handle the questions since you could translate if as needed. So one more chair.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentations. I have a question for the first speaker, so we will need a translation,
Yes.
please. The topic on field dependence, independence is fascinating, and it seems that it was a question of the chicken and the egg kind of thing. What
What's
comes
first? Yes.
Does the speaker have any information from the literature, or can she speculate, or if it's a genetic or a biological underpinnings of this process?
Okay.
What would this be?
I will translate.
Yeah.
Вы поняли, нет?
Не все.
В литературе, вот, когда что первично, вот, dependence влияет на математические ability или математические занятость влияет, вы в литературе это видели? Да.
В научной литературе на сегодняшний день изучаются просто когнитивные стили. Просто когнитивные стили. То есть, и более того, эти когнитивные стили рассматривались больше всего, ну, вот в контексте социальной адаптации людей. К математике мы первые.
She thinks that in the literature there were cognitive styles considered, but they are trying to sort of relate it to the field of mathematics and mathematics education. Биология или генетика там не было? Вы знаете каких-то результатов в биологии, в
Биологии, в генетике по поводу...
Микрофон, говорите, пожалуйста.
Окей.
Вопрос был о том, знаете ли вы о какой-то литературе по поводу field dependence or field independence, каково происхождение этих abilities, насколько они генетически, насколько есть генетическая предрасположенность, или что такое, в этом заключался этот вопрос.
Спасибо.
That was a correction of the translation of the original. So the question is about genetic ability.
Появление вообще этого понятия когнитивный стиль, возникло как именно стиль, как предпочитаемый способ переработки информации человеком. То есть предполагается, что independence или dependence — это одинаковые равнозначные полюсы. Но в нашем как раз-таки контексте, в нашем исследовании мы думаем, что это не так, что это именно ability, это способность. Даже само выделение каких-то существенных связей в каком-то контексте, оно предполагает именно способность. И мы выделяем, мы не рассматриваем как стиль, как равнозначные полюсы, а рассматриваем как способность.
The answer is they're more or less equivalent in the originally in cognition, right? In that field, there are two more or less equivalent abilities of being dependent or field independent. But they somehow single out independence. Опять я не то говорю? Да, вопрос, а потом.
Sorry, a similar question. According to your research, does everyone have potential to develop independence?
Yes. Конечно,
Yes.
насколько я понимаю.
Everyone has
Развитие независимости, развитие поля независимости — это ориентир. Потому что, как показывают наши данные, то как раз-таки поле независимости, чем выше показатель в поле независимости, тем больше студент проявляет именно математического мышления, не математической культуры, то есть знание методов, фактов, каких-то еще теорий, математических. Это, в общем, можно отнести как к феномену математической культуры мышления. А математическое мышление — это совсем другое.
They distinguish mathematical culture and mathematical thinking. So mathematical culture consists of knowing something, facts, formulas, theorems, and mathematical thinking is more like logical structure. And they conjecture that the number one, it's the independence could be developed, everyone could develop, and it must be developed.
Дело в том, что
That's their point.
поле
In order
зависимое.
to promote mathematical thinking, right?
Yes.
Not just culture, but the thinking, the logic of the process.
Полезависимые студенты, они не проявляют этой особенной специфики мышления при решении математических задач. То есть они в принципе не могут решать теоретические задачи.
The field-dependent students, they don't have ability to problem solve to a large extent, according to their concept. Is this maybe later there will be more exchange about it? Вы можете задать и на русском, и на английском сразу?
Yeah, I'll first say it in English, I guess, and then in Russian.
Yes, please.
I think I mostly want to comment, and I have a follow-up question, but I just kind of want to caution all of us, about making inferences based on this type of data, because, as you pointed out, I think there is absolutely no way to tell whether it's substantial practice in mathematics that contributed to the field independence of a particular group, or vice versa. It's pure correlation, and to make conjectures, I think, is not appropriate based on this kind of data about whether field independence really contributes to mathematical ability or not. And another related comment is that there are a lot of studies that look at the relations between different cognitive skills and mathematical performance. Field dependence versus independence is one of them, but there is a ton of other things, and typically it's useful to see whether this correlation reflects, some other variable, some other factor underlying both, for example, or contributing both to field dependence, independence, and to mathematics. So I guess the question is whether you did look at other cognitive factors, whether you did look at some indicator of general intelligence to see whether this correlation is not due to those common factors. That is the English version. Now I'll say it in Russian. Я говорила о том, что мне кажется... Yes. Вопрос заключается в том, смотрели ли эти исследователи на какие-то другие факторы, которые могут коррелировать и с field dependence, и с математикой, потому что это может быть люди с более высоким IQ, например, проявляют и то, и другое, и другие когнитивные факторы могут contribute.
Безусловно. Я в самом начале сказала, что мы делаем такое большое исследование, и это только фрагмент, то есть один когнитивный стиль, который я сегодня представила, да, и как он взаимодействует с успешностью в математике. А вообще... вообще мы уже смотрели логические умения и навыки. И один из аспектов. Второй аспект, который мы рассматривали в этом тоже исследовании, это способность оперировать мысленными образами. То есть это тоже, то есть мы хотим
Logical abilities and visual imagery is also could be factors. So they were considering those being a factor of good mathematical ability.
Мы просто хотим сейчас выделить, если можно так сказать, необходимый и достаточный набор когнитивных функций, общих когнитивных функций, которые обеспечивают математическое мышление, именно математическое мышление.
So they want to find necessary conditions for mathematical thinking, and they think that this one that they single out is probably the prior, or one of them at least. But there is no causality, as was pointed out, right? There is a correlation, but no causality. That's the problem, or I don't know, that's the feature.
Безусловно, один этот стиль, он никаким образом не может, сказать, что вот у человека, да, есть способности. Однако, если, скорее всего, он может сказать, что если нет этой поленезависимости, то, скорее всего, он не будет успешен в математике. Вот это можно сказать. А обратно никак нельзя.
Okay, so maybe to the interest of time, we might switch to other questions.
Yes, I have a question to the second presenters. Thank you, and thank you for the conversation. And it's kind of two questions. You were giving an example of a level 3 individualization through the individualization to disabled people. And I wonder, does it cover also an attempt to measure ability before the lesson, like to split a classroom for a few groups, for example? Would it be also this level? And then a kind of additional question, do you consider the streaming kind of approach, which we collect different classrooms of different level, also to be somewhere in your hierarchy of different individualization types?
So the first question, whether, if I understand correctly, whether the teacher already know about students' different levels of abilities in the classroom and selects the tasks accordingly. So in the United States schools, the teachers actually do know. They get the students, when they identified of particular needs, the students in special education in the classrooms, and all these classrooms that we investigated were inclusion classrooms, where students of general education students with regular abilities and above average abilities are in the same classroom as students with learning disabilities and physical disabilities and emotional disturbances. So in those classrooms, each classroom teacher, it's elementary school, so there is a primary teacher, gets reports from the specialist on what are the needs of all the students with special needs and how they learn better. So there are some strategies, suggestions on techniques and methods, as well as on how the students learn better and what is appropriate support for the students in the classroom. So the teacher does know. So when we have our student teachers or our pre-service teachers working to those classrooms, their cooperating teachers, the main teachers, provide that information to them. So our goal is to see whether they learned well in the classroom and can implement how they could use technology appropriately and choose technology appropriately to support those students so that they can either learn at the same level as their peers without special needs, if we're talking about physical or emotional disabilities, or whether they can support their learning to up maximum of their abilities if they have particular learning disabilities. In terms of streaming, so the motion of movement right now is towards inclusion, not towards segregation. So there are only self-contained or specialized classrooms for students with severe disabilities. So we may have 13, 14 years olds of autism who function at the level of first graders, so kindergartners. That would be a separate class of just those students. But majority of special needs students with mild disabilities are integrated into the regular classroom. However, in addition to a regular teacher, you will have a special education teacher support, maybe a couple of other adults who may be sitting next to these children and help them throughout the lesson.
Maybe I have a follow-up question just quickly to that. So in the United States, as you well know, tracking is a very big issue, and the concern is that there are differential learning opportunities for students in one track versus students in another track, and this doesn't take into account that intelligence is quite complex, and students who appear low in ability may have certain abilities that will allow them entry if they have the right appropriate opportunities. So one issue in differentiated instruction, as I understand it, is that you could have differentiation in the same classroom with students, though, participating in really very different kind of classrooms because they're engaged in very different kind of activities, versus another kind of classroom in which you have differentiation, in which students participate in the same classroom world, but have different levels of work that they could exceed in and go into another level or not. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. As when Samantha was showing the rubric, she noticed that none of our pre-service teachers, so people who are right in the program right now, demonstrated level 4. One of the level 4 criteria could be universal design for learning, where you have the same entry point or different entry points for the same tasks. And so all students in the same classroom learning the same topic, but it does not limit them by giving this type of activity to these kids and this type of activity to these kids, but provides different levels and different pathways within the same larger task for all students. This is something we are struggling to teach our students and help them because most of them come with this idea that if I work with low ability students or low level students, for whatever reasons they are low level, could be learning disability or could be just bad teacher previous year and they didn't make a connection, or we have very diverse classrooms in the New York City. They feel like I need to give them something simpler, or I need to give them less work so that they can succeed. And as a in the teacher preparation program, as a professor in teacher preparation program, this is one of the largest struggle to help them to develop tasks that provide for multiple entry points and no ceiling. And technology, in my opinion, is one of those tools that could help us to reach that kind of goal. And if we teach our students to use that technology effectively and appropriately.
Thank you very much. So maybe time for one more question? Yes, go ahead.
So my question is for both, so I hope someone translates it.
Okay.
So it's primarily for the second paper, but I think also the first paper has something related to it.
Ага, это больше вас касается. Второй paper, чем первый.
So both of you had a theory and you developed or chose instruments you use in your study. And especially in the second, I feel that the way your instrument works should inform back the theory. And I would like to hear about you. And you may also think if your situation has the same thing, that the way you use your instrument informs the theory that you use to choose the instrument for the study. Did you understand my question? At least you were nodding.
И инструмент, который вы выбрали, как он влияет на теорию, которую вы тоже... Обратная связь инструмента на теорию. Ну вот на этот... Да.
Вы хотели начать? Мы можем продолжить. There's always a hope that whatever you do affects the theory, right? So yeah, I believe that you're absolutely right, that understanding the particular data, the instrument we developed is to collect the data and understand our future teachers or our current teachers in the classroom and how they make selections in terms of adjusting the instruction or developing the instruction and assessment according to the needs of the students. And the differentiated instruction is a big term which is not fully understood. So we hope that by understanding what teachers do in the classrooms, we can maybe inform the field on what is differentiated instruction. It is assumed to be understood, and we all teach it from, and it's in every textbook, but in reality, what we see in the classroom clearly indicates that we don't understand what is, all of us understand it differently. And so our hope is that by having a construct which is measurable and which could be assessed in a variety of settings, could inform us on what is it are we looking for.
The second part of your question, second part of your question, where you had the 4 items for the achievement monitoring, and these items went into 3 categories. 2 worked as you predicted, 1 split, and 1 went to the wrong category.
Yes.
I was thinking maybe things like that would inform you specifically, and also that you have many dimensions for the differentiated instruction, but most of them fell to 1 category. So are these observations feeding back into theory?
So, right, so in the theory, like one of our, should be answering this, you want to answer? Samantha feels a bit shy, so she could answer some of those questions. But so in our instructional adaptations are understood much better, and all those like criteria and items really fell into the same factor, but as you noticed, and when I showed factor analysis table, right? One of the academic progress monitoring, and that was the item that dealt with adjustment, right, of, right, so like specific formative assessments in the classroom. So while in the theory it's under academic progress monitoring, in reality it's both, because formative assessment really tells us about what needs to be done right there. It's assessment on the go. So it's for teachers to be able to modify the instruction on the fly based on the feedback from the students. So it really goes right back to instructional adaptations. And so now it's a question of where does it fit and how well it fits. So this is something that we believe we need to do a little more work before we know where it goes, or maybe it has to be split somehow more clearly. So because based on what we have, we were not able to really, like, it really overlaps two areas. So maybe there should be another factor that, not in this case, but we thinking that we either need to clarify criteria so that they easily split, or we need to understand where is that, because these are not black and white. They are really shared, some of those ideas. So if we want to assess it, maybe we should have a shared criteria and not like two separate factors here.